OpenAI has released their coding agent called Codex. It's an app that you can download on your computer, and it's one of the best coding agents that I've come across. Even though it might seem a little bit overwhelming or technical, it's actually really easy to use. In this video, I'm going to explain how to get started with Codex, what are some of the tips and tricks that you need to know to get the most out of it, and if you watch until the end of the video, you are going to feel comfortable downloading Codex and starting to build yourself. It's free to use. You don't even need a ChatGPT subscription to use it. But if you have even the $20 ChatGPT subscription, you're going to get a ton of usage out of Codex. Right now, the rate limits are really high on Codex. So to get started, just go to ChatGPT's Codex page. You can Google for that and then download it on to your Mac. Right now, the app is only available on Mac OS. So that's one downside of Codex. But if you don't have a Mac and you watch this video, I'm sure pretty soon that OpenAI is going to release it for Windows as well. So once you download Codex onto your computer, this is what it looks like. And it's kind of like a messaging interface. So here on the left side, you have threads, and I'm going to talk about all of the features in a second before we get into actually building. So we have all of the threads here on the left side. So threads are basically folders in your computer. So if you add a new project and you click that button, it's going to open up your folders on your computer. And you can open up an existing folder with code if you are, for example, exported code from Lovable, and then you want to keep building inside of Codex, you would just open that folder. Or we can open a brand new folder, which is what I did here. This is a new empty folder, test video Codex. And here I just had Codex build a simple classic snake game. And I'll show you the output in a second. This is the main thing that you need to know, is that you have threads, which are essentially folders in your computer on a high level. And then you can essentially just create new chats inside of a folder. So you can have multiple chats going at once. And each chat is basically the agent building something. So you can see here, this was our prompt. The agent worked for 4 minutes and 59 seconds. You can see what it did. It inspected the repo, it explored the files, it created the folders. It did all of this in the background. So Codex is really a coding agent that works on your behalf to write code. And it's not just like ChatGPT where you're sending a message and getting a message back. It's very agentic. It's taking your prompt and breaking it down into pieces so that it can actually complete what you asked for. So there's a few more things that you should know about before we actually get in and start building something, because I think the best way to learn is to actually build. So first down here, the model. Right now, GPT 5.4 is the best model that OpenAI has for coding. So I would suggest using GPT 5.4. Now there are other models you can use. You could use Codex, for example, which is also pretty good, 5.3 Codex, but I think 5.4 is the best. And then for reasoning, I'm on extra high, which is a little bit slower to get a response, but the best quality response. So you can do lower reasoning, you'll get a quicker response and it'll use up less of your rate limits. The other thing that you can do if you do a / command and you type fast is you can turn on fast mode. So fast mode, I'm going to turn it off though. Fast mode will increase your speed. So it'll give you quicker responses, but it does use your rate limits more quickly. So it's nice to have it on sometimes if you're kind of just want to get more work done. Maybe actually for this video, I'll turn it on just so we get responses a little bit more quickly, but generally I do like to keep it off. You can also create a Git repository. So by doing that, it's creating a Git repository, which is really nice. You can create multiple branches, and then you can sync up with GitHub to actually sync your code to GitHub. So not everything is on the local machine, and then you can push and save your code to the cloud repo. Two more things here I'm going to tell you about, which are important, and then we're going to get into the actual building. So there's the skills page here. So this gives Codex superpowers. You can turn on any of the skills that they have. For example, I have linear skill turned on so it can access my linear. If we go down and see some of the options, there's image gen, so you can turn on the image gen skill. I just turned it on so we can generate and edit images using OpenAI. There's a PDF skill. The Playwright skill is really cool. It can open up a browser and test your app, for example. So that's a cool one to have, but definitely worth going through all the skills. And you can also create your own skill as well through the skill creator or upload a skill. There's a lot of skills online from GitHub, for example, that you could potentially add. Then there's automations. This is a beta feature from OpenAI. You can automate work by setting up scheduled threads. So any of these threads that we just had, for example, we could do that on a schedule. So just as an example, from recent PRs and reviews, suggest next skills to deepen. That's an interesting one. These are more coding related as opposed to like work automation. So I wouldn't think of these as much as like an OpenClaw automation, although that is something that I think OpenAI will have soon, considering OpenAI did acquire OpenClaw. But these are more like scheduled automations in your coding workflow. So that's how I would think about these automations right now. I don't use any of them right now. It's definitely skills and automations aren't necessarily required to start using Codex and getting value out of it, but it's something you should be aware of. Okay, so this is the app that I built previously. It was the Snake app. So here it is. This is the Snake game that I built. This was just one prompt, but let's continue building on top of it. Let's go back to Codex. So I'm sending a prompt to make it so the snake is basically all one snake, not blocks the way that it was in the first version. And it moves in all directions, not just up, down, left, right. It could be interesting if it could move a little bit. I'm curious if it uses this. I don't mean like 3D, so we'll see what Codex thinks. But I mean more like, just able to move in any diagonal direction that we want. So I'm curious to see what it does. And just to show you here, it's immediately exploring the files. And this is very similar to Claude Code. I have a video on Codex versus Claude Code where I talk about more of the similarities and differences between them. So go to our channel and check out that video if you're interested. But it is very similar to Claude Code. But what I like about Codex is I just really do like this interface. I also really like the pricing. So right now you're getting more value for your $20 on Codex than you are on Claude Code. They're just giving you more tokens basically. So OpenAI is, I guess, subsidizing it more and giving you more value here. But yeah, so it's reading all the files, and a game is just one example. You can I'm building a full SaaS app that's kind of, it's a little bit like OpenClaw. It's like a marketing agent basically to do work for me. And it's a pretty complicated SaaS app with a full backend database, user authentication connected to Supabase. And I'm using Codex and Claude Code for that. But generally I'm using Codex when it has to take on a more complex task. I'm also really using it for planning a lot. If you do /plan, it'll go into plan mode. So that's another nice feature to know about. It's really good at planning, and then I'll send it back to Claude Code to review the plan, and then I'll send it back to Codex to review Claude Code's work. Going back and forth, I think, is a way to get a lot of value out of these coding agents. Something else that you should know is if you go to the top right and you click toggle diff panel, we can actually see the code that was written, and if it's making changes, what are the changes? Right now, we just see what was created in the first version. But if it makes changes, it makes deletions, that kind of thing, it'll all show up here. So you can actually view the specific code. So, okay, here we are. It says it's reworking the game. It read all the code. So basically first it understood the code, and that was just the agent knowing that it can't just code right away. It needs to do this review step. And then now it's going to switch the code and the rules to continuous heading-based movement and updating the test so new movement collision model stays deterministic. Okay, so we're gonna test this again. And now it's just basically turning on a dev server, which means we can test it locally on our machine. If you wanted to get your code hosted on the internet, you could use Vercel, Netlify. You could ask Codex, what does it think is the best way to do that? You could ask how to do it with Netlify, for example, and then it'll walk you through step-by-step how to do it. That's something that you should really keep in mind when using tools like this, is if there's ever anything you want to do, but you're not sure how, just ask it and the agent will generally be able to help you. Okay, so now here we go. This is really nice. The only thing is I wish it turned a little bit sharper, because sometimes if I get stuck near the wall, seems like it's almost like too late to turn around. But yeah, overall, pretty cool. Let's try to make that one change. And again, this is just one simple example of building a simple game to show you what's possible. But as I mentioned, you can really build anything that you want with Codex. I think it's always important to start smaller, start with something more simple, even if you have a really ambitious app. And also remember to use plan mode when you're starting and when you're building new features, because that's just generally going to give you a much better result. Okay, so here we are. Yes, this is much better and more what I was hoping for. It's actually not that easy. There we go. Okay, cool. Perfect. Let me know in the comments if you want me to cover more about Codex in the future, and subscribe to our YouTube channel to get more free content like this. We'll see you in the next video.